Welcome back. Can we just admit these strings don't do anything and get rid of them the next time around? So, anyways, that being said, we're going to talk about the Boston Bruins today after their historic collapse. Now, I've seen a lot of this is the biggest upset in history. No, it's not. Florida was coming off of a year where they were President's Trophy winners. It feels like the whole, St. Louis was the worst team in the league argument when St. Louis was expected to be better. Florida this year was expected to be better than the regular season record was. So it was honestly kind of a nightmare setup for Boston. They have record number of wins, 65, record number of points, 860 or whatever it was. Doesn't matter because it's done. And it did feel like Florida was the absolute worst possible matchup in that first round for the Boston Bruins. So best of luck to Toronto starting tonight because Florida, they may very well be the number 8 seed in the East, but they're not your typical number 8 seed. So they lose in the first round, and this is the discussion point that we're at today, right? So it started off with a win at home, 3-1. Then they lost at home 6-3, and that was where you could tell Olmark wasn't 100%. That's where you could tell things were a little bit off. But then they went out on the road and they won back-to-back games. They went 4-2 and 6-2, right? So they limited Florida's chances. They poured on the offense, and it looked like they were going to survive. And up until overtime in Game 5, it looked like, there's a good chance they're going to knock out Florida. And then the turnover happened by Olmark. He wasn't able to get back in time. And, your winner in that one is Florida, 4-3. And then they lost on the road 7-5 in Game 6. A very sloppy game that, again, you could see that Olmark was not 100% on that. So they go to Swayman in Game 7, which Jim Montgomery says he doesn't regret. Doesn't regret keeping Olmark in until the 6th game. They lose Game 7, 4-3 at home in overtime. Now, the interesting thing is, all season I kept seeing from Bruins fans how negative I was. And why are you being so negative? This is they're what do you mean they're not favorites? What do you mean you still have some concerns? What do you mean they're not the greatest team in the National Hockey League's history? Regular season records, I mean, they're great. They're fine. They're awesome. But this was a team in Boston that had their problems in the first round last year. And I didn't know how much better this team was going to be when they faced those same adversities in the first round this year compared to last year. Because it's largely the same roster. It's very, very similar in terms of its makeup, right? So during the regular season, and we'll take a look at some regular season and postseason numbers here to show the difference. Olmark 46-1 during the regular season, 938 save percentage. In the playoffs, 3-3 with an 896 save percentage. Now, while Florida was playing well, that huge drop in save percentage, again, it seemed to indicate that something was off. Olmark wasn't skating on off days either. This was something that started shortly before the playoffs. There were rumblings about whether or not Olmark was even going to play in the first game. Pastrnak, during the regular season, 82 games, 61 goals, 52 assists, 113 points. Great year for Pastrnak. In the playoffs, 5 goals in 7 games. No assists, a -2. So 5-on-5, Florida did a very good job of controlling Boston. And it is something that over the last few years, there have been periods of time where they don't score 5-on-5. And it's weird. It's just like they forget how to or something for like 2-3 games, and then they'll figure it out and it comes back. But definitely during the playoffs in this round, they had that problem. McAvoy played 67 games, 7 goals, 45 assists, 52 points. Great regular season. In the playoffs, 5 assists in 7 games, a -3, and some gaffes that Bruins fans weren't very happy about in those playoffs. Now, the thing that stands out to me is they lose all 3 games with Bergeron back in the lineup. They allow 15 goals in those 3 games. Very not Bruin-like numbers here. Bergeron in those 3 games had 1 goal and he was a -6. And so if you're Jim Montgomery and you've got Patrice Bergeron probably in his final playoffs ever, do you take him out of the lineup? The answer is no. But should they have? Looking at the numbers, maybe. Marchand had 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points over his 7 games. He was a -6 as well. And I only say that because they were 3-1. Now, think of what Toronto did. Bunting. It's good to come back. And they kept him out of the lineup because they were winning, right? And I think there is something to that. And so you put Bergeron back in. I'm not saying Bergeron was a net negative, but the results show that Boston didn't win a game after he came back. Now we get into the really ugly part of it if you're a Bruins fan. First off, there's no first or second round picks in 2023 or 2024. So if you're a Bruins fan, you could probably skip the draft. They have no second round pick in 2025. The 2024 that they traded as top 10 protected, probably a good thing because this team could have problems next year. It's interesting too because I did feel like this was a team that was going to step back this year. Obviously during the regular season they didn't, but I thought some of their weaknesses showed up in the playoffs. Florida did a very good job of exploiting them. So we look at the UFA list. Foligno, probably gone. Bergeron, probably retiring. The emotional embrace between himself and Marchand at the end of Game 7, to me, indicates Bergeron's done. It reminds me very much of Chara's last lap around the rink, and yeah, he's done. Bertuzzi. Does Bertuzzi come back? I don't think they have the cap space to bring back Bertuzzi, because I've seen they should bring him back. I don't think they have the cap space. Nosek, if they want to bring him back, they can probably do that. Hathaway, probably the same. Krejci likely retires. I would think if Bergeron retires, Krejci retires, things are going to get really interesting in Boston really quickly. Orlov, I don't think they have the money to bring him back. And then there's Connor Clifton as well. Clifton, they probably find a way to keep Clifton. And then on the RFA side, you got Frederick. Frederick had a really good year. He's going to get a raise. Lauko bounced back and forth between the AHL and the NHL. We'll see if he has a spot in their lineup next year. And Swayman. What is Swayman worth right now? I would say that for Swayman, $2.5 million a year, probably good. Probably 3 years, $2.5 million per year. I'll throw that number out there. But their cap space is not a lot. $10,587,500. And of course, there are bonuses for Bergeron and Krejci that I don't think are counted with that. So they don't have the money to keep guys. They just don't. This is a team that is not going to be. It may look completely different once we get to October. Is what I'm trying to say here. And because there's no real draft capital that this team has, now they're kind of stuck in a similar situation as Pittsburgh, as Washington, and so we'll see if Boston's the next one that ends up dropping, right? Again, great regular season. Doesn't really matter when you get to the postseason. So I've heard people talking about like it's a historic upset, and I understand that for people of a certain age it may feel that way. For me, it didn't feel like it was a historic upset. So looking at just my earliest memories of historic upsets, 1981, Edmonton beats Montreal 3-0 in the first round. Edmonton had 74 points that year. Montreal had 103. Montreal was a veteran-laden team with Guy Lafleur and others on it. And Gretzky and the Oilers came in and beat them 3 straight. It was an absolute shocker. And then the following year, Montreal had 109 points. They lost in the first round in 5 games, 3-2 to the Quebec Nordiques, who only had 82 points that year. So huge upsets of Montreal, but we'll come back to Montreal in a moment here. 1983, the New York Rangers sweep the Philadelphia Flyers in the first round, 3 straight games. It was only a best of 5 back then. New York had 80 points, Philadelphia 106. Keep in mind, this is before you had 3-point games and everything, right? So that'd be like 120 by today's standard. And then Montreal in 1984, they were the ones doing the upsetting. That was, I believe, the Steve Penny year, right? 75 points for Montreal, 104 points for Boston, so a 29-point difference, and Montreal swept them 3 straight. Then in 1982 as well, and this is the one to end up on, because this to me was the biggest upset ever. It's the Miracle of Manchester. There's a reason it gets talked about a lot. The LA Kings knocked out the Oilers 3-2 in a best of 5. Part of the reason we went to a best of 7 may very well have been that series, because it takes out Gretzky and the Oilers. A year after, they were the ones doing the upsetting. So the Oilers had 111 points that year. LA had 63. So that's a lot of points difference right there. That's a ton. So yes, it was a big upset. But the thing is, Boston, not completely outside of the realm of possibility for them to choke. There's a reason why after the 5th game, I said to my wife, I said, it's over. Because I know. So back in 1984, there is the 3-game sweep against Montreal. That, to me, qualifies as a choke. 1993, they got swept in 4 games by the Buffalo Sabres when they'd been first in the division. So again, it was great regular season. In the postseason, 2002 against Montreal in the first round, they lost in 6. And then in 2004 against Montreal, they lost in 7. The best part of that, they were up 3-1 in that series. And then done. 2010 against Philadelphia. They lose in the second round in 7. They had been up 3-0 in that series. And they were up 3-0 in Game 7. And that was it. I guess we win. No, we got to play the rest of the game, guys. Well, there you go. We lost. All right, cool. 2014 against Montreal in round 2, they lost in 7. So this is a team that has had upset losses before, and these are just the ones that really stand out when I'm looking through their history, which was a fun game to play this morning. Which of these upsets was bigger? But Boston has had this problem before where they're the number 1 team. There's a lot expected of them, and they just don't perform up to expectation. So I'm not entirely surprised. I did expect them to win the cup this year because I thought, you know what? Somebody's going to have to break this President's Trophy curse. Maybe it'll be Boston. I'll pick Boston. And no. Big no on that. So that won't happen again. That will never happen again. And it's sad because this is a team that's been really, really good during the Bergeron era. And I'm sure people will say it's a shame Bergeron only got 1 Stanley Cup. I would counter with, it is a shame Ray Bourque never got a cup as a Boston Bruin and had to go to Colorado in order to get his cup ring. I always found that embarrassing and humiliating. So this is just, it's another layer. And it is definitely going to mean that, yeah, I'm probably going to be more pessimistic when it comes to the Bruins. But the interesting thing is that as much as I hedge a little bit, I'm like, well, they're winning, but with Boston, when they lose, I don't have the big dramatic reaction either that I see from some fans. So some of the same people that will say, he's really negative for a Boston fan, why is he always so negative, are then the ones that will absolutely flip out after a loss and say, everybody needs to go, fire everybody, trade everybody. Whereas I'm saying, there's always next year. Yeah, they probably won't win again, but it's all right. It's fine. It's good. It's kind of the whole thing of being a Bruins fan, right? So we'll see how things turn out this coming season. But I'm not expecting another President's Trophy, and I don't think Bergeron's coming back. So there you go. The Boston Bruins will be remembered for having the number 1 point total and going out in the first round. And there it is. I've also seen people saying which choke was worse, the Boston one or Tampa. Both. I don't think the Boston one's more recent, so that's why it feels like a bigger upset. But yeah, the Tampa Bay upset against Columbus, that was humiliating the entire series. This one was humiliating from game 5 through game 7. Games 1 through 4 were fine, so I guess Boston wins that one. Not by much. But at any rate, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.